to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, July 8th, 2015, hump day, middle of the weekday, starting that long, slow glide down to Pow on a Friday, and another wacko weekend that we have to look forward to. And by the way, for those who've been wondering, the new version of the What Really Happened website will be launching this weekend. I finally fixed my big, ugly problem. I just want a couple more days of testing and making sure everything's tweaked up properly. But we're on track for a launch on Friday night, so you can log on in and play with the new system all that you want. Now, obviously, the big news today. Oh, first of all, the phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, 877-300-7645. Tom is in our control room today answering the phone and putting you on the air with your questions. The big news today was the New York Stock Exchange shut down for a little over 2 hours today. And they are still out there saying it was only a technical glitch. It was only a technical glitch. Nothing to worry about. We absolutely know it was not a cyber attack. It was not malicious. I think it's a little too soon to say. And let's be honest here. If it was a cyber attack, they're not going to tell you, because you might run right down to your bank or stock broker and pull out all your cash just in case they might be next. Because this government's whole agenda is keeping your money in the banking system, and to heck with what happens to you personally. So I'm not trusting what the government says one way or the other. And I'm not the only one. A lot of people are looking at this because it wasn't just the New York Stock Exchange that got hit with this problem. And by the way, in putting it back together, all of the pending trade orders were erased. So if somebody made a large move on the market, that vanished. Now, the Wall Street Journal's website went down for a while. At the same time, United Airlines has been dealing with some kind of a major computer problem all day. Their flights are all grounded. And over in Washington, D.C., in the suburb of Adams Morgan, their power grid went down. Still don't know what caused that. Now, there are a lot of people out there wondering if this is the beginning of the virtual 911 or it's an escalation of cyber war somewhere that we're not being told about. Investment CEO Ross Gerber was out there saying there are too many of these things went down at the same time. And he's not buying technical glitch. For one thing, all of these stock exchanges have parallel computer systems, so that when one develops a problem, it instantly switches to the other, to the backup. And the New York Stock Exchange was offline for about 2 hours, a little over 2 hours. The market, they opened just before the end of the trading day. Dow closed 261 down. Of course, it wasn't as bad a day for them as it was for China. China got hammered. China got absolutely hammered. Before we get into that, though, I want to reprise the idea of a virtual 911, of a false flag terror attack that takes place over the Internet. Because at the point where they cannot keep this financial illusion going any longer, it is not beyond the realm of possibility for the U.S. government to crash the computers of the financial system and then blame it on Iran or Syria or Russia or China, because that gets them off the hook. Instead of an economic meltdown that's the cause of their own greed and incompetence, oh, it's an act of war, it's those gosh darn Chinese and those Russians, hate them. We almost had the economy turned around. Where it was going to be, peaches and cream and roses and butterflies from here on out, but those gosh darn cyber criminals over there in the designated enemy zone. It's all their fault. And we know this government doesn't like to have to stand up and accept blame for what they've done wrong. So when it looks like it's all going to come apart, they're going to be trying to find a scapegoat. Now, over in China, they had an absolute disaster last night. Let me take a look at the closing numbers. The Hang Seng was down over 1,400. That's almost 6%. And that is a huge block in a single day. China's stock market has lost something like 1/3 of its value over the last few months, and everybody's panicking. Now, all of a sudden, I'm getting this weird feeling, because over here in the Western world, we have Greece is in default, Ukraine is on the verge of default, Puerto Rico's in default, Detroit's in default, and they're all basically circling the drain, but the Western stock markets are still kind of hanging on there with a little plunge protection team. But China gets hammered that hard, and I'm starting to wonder if we're not seeing the weaponization of the stock market to wage an economic war on China. Because remember, the U.S. agenda is to find a way to wreck global confidence in the yuan to make it less attractive than the dollar. And because they can't bring the dollar up, the only other option is to take the yuan down. And remember, that same high-frequency computer trading that can drive stocks up can be used to drag them back down again. So I'm starting to think that what's going on in China is not necessarily caused by market forces, but an act of war. Covert, clandestine, but still an act of war. Now, over in Greece, the situation is building to a head rapidly. The European Union has taken a tough guy attitude. Paul Craig Roberts was saying that Washington, D.C. is going to tell the Troika to make a deal to accommodate Greece to keep them in the EU. And it's unusual for me to disagree with Paul Craig Roberts, but I don't think he realized the fact that the EU is in the position they can't cut any slack to Greece without triggering demands by all the other EU nations for similar debt relief. And so the EU is taking this rock-hard stance. They're making Greece an offer they can't refuse, which is agree to the EU deal by this coming Sunday or get kicked out of the European Union and go bankrupt. So that's basically the ultimatum. It's like the mafia came in and said, we're going to make you an offer you can't refuse. You do what we want or you're out. That's what basically the EU is saying. And by the way, I said this was going to happen. When the referendum was cranking up, we started hearing all these mutterings about, well, the Greek referendum doesn't conform to the standards that we think it ought to, meaning it's not set up so it could be stolen. And sure enough, the European Commission has declared Greece's referendum was not legally correct. They're just going to pretend it didn't happen. We can just ignore those 61% of the Greek people who want out. They don't count because they didn't run their referendum by the rules that we just made up. That's their latest excuse. They're basically declaring Greece's referendum illegitimate. Doesn't matter, doesn't count. You're still our slaves. Now we're hearing from inside Greece that there's talk of Greece preparing an alternative currency. We had been hearing a couple of weeks ago that Greece was already printing up drachmas to put into circulation upon leaving the European Union. And it could be drachmas, could be something else, because we're starting to hear that Greece may turn to the BRICS banking alliance for financial support. And the red carpet is out. So that pivot to Russia is very much in the cards right now, which tells us that Victoria Nuland is going to be pulling off one of her coup d'etat specials and try and bring down the current government of Greece to put another U.S. puppet back in. Greece has extended their bank holiday and the capital controls. So things are very, very bad over there, but we're hearing from more and more places like Wake Up From Your Slumber. At this point, it's inevitable. Greece will leave the Eurozone, and the only option they have after that is to pivot to Russia, because Russia is holding out the hand of assistance, as opposed to everybody in the West, which has got a hammer saying, you will do what we tell you to do. Now, all Greece has to do is buy a couple of shares in the BRICS Bank, and they will be eligible for funding. And Russia's already said, yes, they're going to go along with that idea. Greece is going to recapitalize from the BRICS Bank, Russia, China, and so forth. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. And one aspect of this glitch on the New York Stock Exchange that we ought to keep in mind, as China's stock market starts to plunge, China's investors are going to be needing to come up with a bunch of cash to cover losses, the Chinese equivalent of the margin call and so forth, and they're going to start dumping the stocks they own in other countries. And remember, the net result of this so-called glitch on the New York Stock Exchange is all the pending orders were erased. And they may have been heading off. A bunch of sell orders coming in from Asia saying we got to sell our stock and pull our money. So I'm having a hard time thinking a single glitch is going to pull down the stock trading system when it does operate in parallel, certainly for 2 hours. At the same time, we had all these other situations going on. So I don't know what's going on, but I'm not buying the official story that it was just a technical glitch. These people have the money to build robust, reliable systems that operate in parallel. The very best of the best equipment is what they have there. They probably even have better equipment than the NSA does, because they got the money to buy the very best here. Now then, do you remember we were talking about the history of all wars are bankers' wars, and all the time the money junkies have gone right out public in the media, in the press, saying that this or that country that is refusing to do as they're told needs to be slapped down. Just before the War of 1812, when Congress refused to renew the charter for the First Bank of the United States of America, the head of the Bank of England, Lord something Rothschild, was in the British media saying, teach those impudent Americans a lesson, bring them back to colonial status. And then years later, when the Civil War began, and Lincoln, rather than borrow money at 30% interest from the bankers, used his authority as president to issue the greenback, there was this scathing letter in the London newspapers about how this could not be allowed for a government to furnish its own money without cost, which of course led to most of the countries of Europe supporting the Confederacy. France and Britain actually considered an invasion of the North American continent in support of the Confederacy. They were held in check by Russia. So, with that little bit of history underneath our belt, it is perhaps not too surprising, although it's alarming, to see this article over in the New York Times urging the European Union to make an example of Greece. That's the message going out. You've got to teach those people that not being our slaves is going to be worse for them than being our slaves. I mean, make an example of Greece. That sounds like a mafia don ordering a hit. This is tough guy talk. You know, how dare you go run your economy for your own benefit? Your role in the universe is to make money and give it to us. Now, something else that we mentioned before, they're getting out of the credit default swaps with Puerto Rico by saying it's a payment moratorium, it's not a default. And now it's being announced. No matter what happens in Greece, the International Monetary Fund will not declare a default. No matter what happens. They've just said, we will never say it is a default. And that is being done to block the holders of credit default swaps on Greece's debt from demanding payment. They basically just cheated everybody who bought one of those credit default swaps. And they're doing it because they don't have any choice. They don't have the money to make good on those credit default swaps. Derivatives are unregulated. And these Wall Street and European financial firms will sell them all over the place and put the money in their pocket, and they don't care. Because if it goes bad, they'll just get another taxpayer bailout, except that the taxpayers don't have enough money to cover these credit default swaps. And they risk crashing the entire derivatives market. I actually went over on this article where it originally appeared and said, this is what's going on. They're just cheating the people who bought the credit default swaps. And this very obvious page came on and said, well, they were idiots to do the credit default swaps. What are you going to do? You know, pay off on these credit default swaps and start this cascade that's going to cause a lot more damage. Really, it's better to screw the people who bought the credit default swaps because they were morons to buy them in the first place. Everybody knows it's a scam, blah, blah, blah. And I said, so your solution is to collapse the entire derivatives market? That's not an alternative. It's a different path to the same ultimate crash. So they're already out there trying to say that, oh, it's no big deal. You know, ordinary people don't have credit default swaps, so why should you care? These people bought these swaps, and so we're going to cheat them, and it's no big deal. They're already out there trying to sell that idea. Okay, we're going to grab a phone call. John in Barbados, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Just some updates on the Greece situation. It's already happening. Parties are already forming all across southern Europe to influence the Spanish, the Italian, and various other nations elected representatives to pull out of the euro. Austria is already having a referendum.
Did it get to the referendum? I know they signed enough petitions to force a debate in their parliament. Has a referendum in Austria been scheduled?
That's the talk, but it's not been confirmed yet.
Oh, okay.
However, what is happening, and I know it's not in your press, massive demonstrations all over Europe in support of Greece. They're saying, you know, and on top of that, in the European Parliament, Nigel Farage made a devastating speech against the euro and the EU.
Yeah, that one I got here. Listen, we're almost at the commercial break. Would you do me a favor? If you see any articles with pictures of the anti-euro, pro-Greece protests anywhere in Europe, send that to me so I can post them on my website, okay?
Will do, Michael.
All right, I appreciate that. So we have about half a minute left here.
Okay. Well, there's another problem that I see that again is not being reported in the Western press. You remember the Syrian town of Palmyra?
Yes.
The Syrian army and Hezbollah have got it locked down now. They've taken over most of the surrounding countryside and are now heading into the town. So that part of ISIS will soon be defunct. But we're getting so little reports in the Western press about this situation.
Oh, yeah, they're going on about Bill Cosby and, Kim Kardashian and all this. I mean, the corporate media is just total fluff. We're going to be back here in a little bit with some of the stuff they don't want you thinking about. Thank you for the call, John. We're going to let you go, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Hi, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking about the economy, the indicators that this Ponzi scheme, House of Cards, is starting to tear apart at the seams. Over in China, major losses there. May even be a covert economic attack to destroy China's economy, to prevent it from being a threat to the U.S. dollar. Half of China's companies have halted trading. The government has ordered some companies to stop selling their stock for months. And everybody's saying everything they're doing is just postponing the inevitable. They won't make the fundamental structural change that can save the global economy. Because the money junkies are always going to be money junkies. And just like a heroin addict, they're going to go on needing more and more and shooting more and more until they die of an overdose, and unfortunately, they will take us with them when the whole global economic system falls down. Now, Tsipras is still trying to act like he's trying to find a solution for Greece to stay in the euro. He offered a 3-year rescue plan, was just torn apart by the members of the European Parliament. Apparently up in Germany, Merkel is facing a revolt within her own party over the handling of the situation in Greece. This really could tear all of Europe apart, and NATO with it. Which brings us to the story we're seeing over an activist post. Is Ukraine next in line for default? Well, they're definitely in line. They're definitely in line this month. Whether they're next or not, I don't know. Puerto Rico might beat them to it. Could be some other countries out there that we don't even know about are in trouble. And it is interesting to see the difference in the treatment of Ukraine and Greece by the money junkies. Because the money junkies are down there in Greece saying, pay us, pay us, pay us, pay us. Ukraine cannot pay for their gas. They can't make the payments on their current debt. And yet the money junkies are pouring money all over Kiev to continue to fight this war to recapture those pesky independent eastern provinces that don't want to be our slaves. We need to go out and enslave them. We need to send the message. It's going to be more painful not to be our slaves than to be our slaves. That's what they're trying to get the message out there. That was the message in the New York Times. Yes, you're slaves, but you're going to have a better life being our slave than not being our slave, because we will do whatever it takes to totally screw up any country that refuses to be part of our little scam. They did it here in the United States of America, launched the War of 1812, tried to assassinate Andrew Jackson, may have had a hand in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. These money junkies will do anything, emphasis anything, to keep the world their financial slaves. We posted a clip from that movie, The International, on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and it's the clip where the guy says, the very essence of the banking system is to make us all slaves to debt. That's what they do. That's what their business is. They're in the business of enslavement. So, Greece, China, and Puerto Rico, that's 3 strikes. You're out of here. Meanwhile, over at Barclays, they have sacked their chief executive, Anthony Jenkins, over an argument regarding the long-term strategy of Barclays, meaning he wasn't able to garner the profits and the plunder that he promised, and so he's out. They're going to get somebody else in there. We're probably going to see a lot of turnover at the top levels of these financial institutions in the coming weeks, if not more of these strange banker suicides. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Raven in Germany. V. Gates, what's on your mind?
V. Gates good. Just wanted to hit 2 quick things here. First of all, you can see right now in the world that your 11th marble theory is fully playing out.
Oh, yes.
They've pushed wages down. If you look at Europe, our wages have been stagnant for like the last 10 to 15 years. The U.S., they've eliminated most of the factory jobs, and wages are really getting pushed down. You have China where the wages are pushed down, and the income isn't coming anymore into where taxes used to fuel the government. This little bit of money that we have is no longer driving the economy, and now they're trying to play with the little bit that's coming in. You know, you see these credit default swaps and all this, these other financial devices that they're doing is it's just playing with the money they already have, reselling debt. You know, they repackage it, resell it, and they're trying to use that to fuel the economy, which is totally not working.
No, you can't use an obligation of payment as a product. I understand modern accounting does treat a debt as an asset, but that only works if the debt is ultimately collectible. And just as we saw in 2008, people are out there handling these debt obligations as items of value, and most of them are worthless. And that is the reality everybody's trying to avoid. In fact, there are a lot of financial institutions that are intentionally not trying to collect on debts they're not sure about. Because while it's a big unknown, they can say it's a unit of value, but the instant they try and collect on the debt and find that they can't, then the value is gone. And so it's kind of this weird, twisted situation where the bankers are now looking the other way with regards to a lot of unpaid debt, because they can't get the money, and if they call attention to it, they can't get the value. It's a very, very bizarre situation.
Yeah, well, exactly. They're using this stuff. They're putting it on the books. They're saying, "Oh, this is collateral. Yeah, we have so much money here, X amount of debt, you know, that we're calling." But it's
it's all made up stuff. I mean,
they can't let REITs default.
The whole idea of mark-to-market accounting, which is what got Enron into its situation, is it allows these corporations to just take a wild guess what this asset will be worth in the future and then book that as earnings today. And it's an absolute absurd method, and yet a lot of corporations are using it. It used to be illegal to do that, and then it got legalized, and it led to the situation with Enron. And yeah, it's all creative, fancy bookkeeping. They've hired all these ex-NASA engineers who used to work on the space shuttle, and now they're all out there writing computer codes to try and make this all look good. They're bringing all these very exotic theories into finance. They're trying to use signal processing, to predict stock trades, and of course, that's not going to work for two reasons. One, signal processing assumes regular periodicity in the underlying signal, which you don't get because there's these constant interruptions from the major trades. And second of all, they're up against Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. When you build a model that mimics the stock market and you start executing trades based on that model, the market will change its behavior responding to your trades. And if you apply that model across too wide an area, it literally invalidates itself. You get the law of diminishing returns. The more you use the model, the less accurate the results are going to be. And that's another area where Wall Street is not facing up to the reality that a lot of this stuff they're doing isn't working.
Yeah, my German economics teacher said that the model that we have now with companies of that you always need to be expanding the unbegrenzt Wachstum, the never-ending growth of something, is end-sum game because we have finite resources on the planet.
Yeah, it's unrealistic. And, I prefer the steady-state theory of businesses. If you've got a good business, enjoy it. And these imperial designs of the large corporations have led to their undoing. Anyway, listen, Raven, I have to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We got more callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, finishing up on the economy, I know we got a couple of calls I'm going to get to you in a second here. Gregory Manarino is out there saying, forget what's going on in individual locations. Look at the global stock market as a whole. It is obviously trending down across the entire globe, and he's absolutely right. Now, remember yesterday I was talking about the contagion from Greece isn't just economic, it's political. And we're seeing that because now down in South Africa, their President Zuma basically said to Russia Today, we don't want Western institutions to dictate to us what to do. Everybody is realizing they can stand up to the money junkie-dominated governments. And yes, it may trigger a war, but it's not like the U.S. and Europe can conquer the entire planet all at once. It's just not possible. And this is how Rome fell, when all the far-flung provinces of the empire started saying, we're just going to go off and do our own thing. The legions are off over in Germany getting slaughtered. We can go our own way. And bit by bit, Rome's empire fell apart until Rome itself collapsed. At least the Western Empire. The Eastern Empire continued on. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Damien in New York. Aloha, Damien. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Doing fine.
That was great analogy regarding Rome. I think this is the linkage is the problem. We've got large institutions, whether it's banking or otherwise, insurance, doesn't matter what it is. We've got small entities being eaten up by bigger entities. When the bigger entities fail, the whole thing comes crumbling down. And I think this big concern with China is that China is involved in a lot of investment here in the United States. Yes. And I think that was covertly the way that the United States could kind of hold, the thumb over them and sort of the ankle and the back of the neck, the foot and the heel and the back of the neck kind of thing. I think that's a big point because they can't win in a conventional war with China, but they can turn the screws on them economically. And I'll tell you, just as a kind of voice on the street kind of thing, a lot of people here in New York City and New York, the financial advisors and institutions, they starting Monday and Tuesday, before even this thing with Wall Street today, they were reaching out specifically to clients with concerns of first China, Puerto Rico, Greece as well, but their main concerns were China and Puerto Rico, and they're actually asking for personal meetings for these people to get their personal, basically to get them to make a decision on certain things. And that's not something that's normal at all. These people give their money to these advisors, trusting them to make decisions, and these advisors are basically at a point where they're like, we don't want to make this decision on our own. So just wanted to let you know.
Well, it's entirely possible that there is a covert attempt to destroy China's economy, to remove the threat of the yuan, and as these things tend to happen, somebody talks to somebody, and somebody goes to their own investor and says, get me out of the Chinese stocks as quickly. Oh, why is that happening? Well, something's going to happen. I can't tell you what's classified. Oh, really? Should I get out of the Chinese stocks? Yeah, you probably ought to get out of the Chinese stock. And just word of mouth spreads that way. And looking at the rapidity with which the Chinese stock market has come down, it's not feeling like normal market behavior to me. It's feeling like somebody has weaponized the global stock market system and is using it against China.
That's a great observation and really well put. The thing about this thing on Wall Street, I kind of agree with you that, they jumped to this judgment of, it was just a glitch, it was nothing else. Because I think if anything happens, they want to be able to have full control of whatever it is. So if they create this instability or destabilization of in any instance, they want to be able to have control of how to maneuver that around. So I think that's a big part of what you were saying. I do have a doubt on that too. They kind of jumped to judgment on that, and
well, I think the goal was, if they
jump to judgment and then be like, well, we're not sure.
Well, even if they say they're not sure, what they wanted to do was prevent the American people from running to their banks and their stock brokerages and saying, I want to cash out right now. Because the goal was to keep all the money in the banking financial system, and it doesn't, if the American people get screwed over, well, tough, that's what you get for being an American citizen. The important thing is to keep the money in the financial system, and that's why they were so quick to come out and say, no, it's just a technical glitch, it's not a hack attack, it's nothing underhanded. You can leave your money in the NASDAQ, and you can leave your money in the S&P, and you can go to these other, it's all fine, it's just a glitch. And, which is kind of like, saying the Titanic just sprang a little tiny leak there. Anyway, listen, Damien, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over here to Steve in California. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I was driving my car, and I heard the financial news, and I knew right away. I said to myself, they pulled the plug before they could see, the stocks further dip. This is an old common tale of how you stop it. It's not gonna stop it forever. When you turn the markets back on again, it's gonna start up again. But they won't be able to use this excuse tomorrow if they open the markets again. I see another false flag event coming on here to close down the markets, either a bomb threat or something else. So I have to use some other excuse. They cannot go with a technical glitch, a computer glitch. You can't go with that twice. And you're right, they do have a backup system on this. This should never happen, if that's the truth. And number two scenario, you're correct. If it is a cyber attack, they'll never let you know because they don't want you pulling your money out of the system. So that's kind of how I see it. I think I wouldn't be surprised these markets are closed until next Monday. And behind the scenes, they're probably pumping in money here and there, trying to figure out how to prop this back up again and find a solution. They don't want to see this happen again because then people will, the second time around, get word of it and get smart and say, I'm pulling my money out. I'm calling my broker. I'm selling everything. And then you're going to see it really fast collapse.
Yeah, it's going to go really, really fast. But again, it was only the New York Stock Exchange that was hit by this glitch. But it did weird out a lot of people that at the exact same time, the Wall Street Journal's web server went down. United Airlines got hit with a computer glitch. They're still trying to clean up that mess. Suburb of Washington, D.C. had a blackout on their power grid. They're still not saying what caused that. So, we're out here kind of guessing. But one thing we can definitely know, whatever is being put out by the government and the media is there to protect the money, not the people. And it was ever thus. Steve, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Now, turning to Iran, we are hearing all kinds of mixed signals coming out there. We have people who are actually inside the negotiations saying they're getting closer to this deal. In fact, they're basically down to the timetable of the lifting of sanctions for this whole situation. Outside, everybody's making all sorts of wild claims about what's being promised and what's being given here, and it turns out this claim about the inspection of non-nuclear military sites, somebody was trying to bluff saying that Iran had agreed to that because That was never part of the agreement. So that after it's all over and they say, oh, we need to go into this Air Force base, no, you're not allowed to go there. See, they're in violation of the agreement, the sanctions go back on. It is very obvious that Israel and Israel's whores in the U.S. Congress are trying to kill this any way they can. We are basically hearing from Netanyahu that if a deal with Iran is signed, he is going to have his slaves inside the U.S. Congress pass a veto-proof bill to extend the Iran sanctions for 10 years. That obviously will completely invalidate the P5+1. And even Fox News was running this commercial earlier today about oppose the P5+1 deal. We must keep Iran from getting the bomb. And that's pure Orwell. The whole point of the P5+1 deal is to guarantee that Iran isn't building a bomb. And they're trying to turn it around saying the P5+1 deal means Iran will get a bomb. Well, if there is no P5+1 deal, and Iran knows the U.S. and Israel are gunning for them, there's no reason for them not to start developing a nuclear weapon as a deterrent. And I wouldn't blame them if they did, because we know who the real aggressor here is on this whole situation. Israel wants Iran smashed up as a regional economic rival. The U.S. wants control of Iran's oil so that it's sold only for the U.S. dollar. The money junkies want Iran brought into the gentle embrace of private central banking. And when you have this many people looking at war to solve their own particular agenda, wars tend to happen. We got to take a break for our top of the hour news, and we will be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. And looking at the Fox News feed, we're getting this weird double message. It was only a glitch on the New York Stock Exchange, but we should be concerned about cyber vulnerabilities. Okay. Now, getting on back to the situation with Iran, we're seeing an article over in richardsilverstein.com about how the anti-Iran lobby is stepping up its game before the next deadline for the P5+1 talks. And they're basically saying this thing is a non-starter for the simple reason that not too long ago, the U.S. Congress forced Obama to accept their approval or not of the P5+1 deal, being urged on by Benjamin Netanyahu, who is going to tell his whores in Congress, vote against the approval of P5+1 so that we can open the door to war. As long as you American kids fight it, because we can't risk our precious Israeli babies on this. No, that's what you Americans are for, is to go fight our wars for us. And so Congress voted itself the final approval over the P5+1 deal from the point of view of the United States of America. Mind you, this is the exact same Congress that pre-approves wars with authorizations for the use of force and fast-track the trade deal because they don't want to be bothered actually carrying out their actual job of oversight. But when it comes to the possibility that there might be peace in Iran, when Israel says jump, they all shout, "Oh, my knees!" All right, we're going to grab a phone call here. DJ in Georgia, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, thanks for taking the call. Yeah, the hypocrisy of this, the Greece banking failure right now is amazing. The one question that a lot of people, aren't asking is when you have, the definition of a Ponzi scheme is basically when you have money coming in and you can't pay out the, any money going out unless you have more money coming in, basically. Am I right? That's what the definition
it's a drastic oversimplification, but yes, that'll work.
Exactly. So you have Greece people who have money in their banks, but they can't access it right now. I mean, if people are asking, well, where did that money go? It's, well, the bank doesn't have it. It lent it out. It lent out your money and needs new money constantly to come in, to be able to pay out the old money that's sitting in there. So, and that's with every bank, I suppose, but somehow want to make Greece the exception or, to teach them a lesson. And the other thing that I found hypocritical is basically, they were saying Greece overspends, deficit spending. America is the biggest deficit spending country there is. I mean, our debt we can't pay back our debt unless we raise the debt ceiling. And our money that we get from the Federal Reserve right now is at 0%. And they're
No. There's a couple of things wrong there. First of all, you need to understand the corporate media is out there to sell you the message that Greece are the bad people and the bankers are the good people. I mean, that's how blatant that is. Second of all, the money you and I get from the Federal Reserve is not at 0% interest. Okay, it's at like 18 and 19% interest.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Wall Street firms are getting their money from the Federal Reserve at 0% interest.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what I meant. And the sad part about it is that, now they're saying that the terms of the bailout for Greece is that the EU has to do these fiscal policies where they basically, dictate what gets cut, what the spending is. They basically want to do the budget for the governments, and this is a foreign bank, and they want to do not just Greece's, but every country, because they can't just do one country and then not do fiscal policy for the other countries. So my thing is, what nation on earth would allow a foreign bank to do that, to sit there and allow them to dictate who gets their pension and who doesn't, or how much money the country gets to run?
We've got that here in the United States of America. Most of the owners of the Federal Reserve are not American citizens.
That's true. And they are the ones who create the fiscal policy here, unfortunately. So we're under that burden here, and it's sad to see Greece going through the same thing. So,
well, I think Greece is doing the right thing, and they're going to pay a heavy price for it. Okay, just like the United States, when they kicked out the first bank of the United States, the result was the War of 1812. Okay, the countries that are slave to money junkies will declare war on any country that breaks free. Remember what happened following the Weimar Republic inflation, and the Nazis came to power, and they shut down the privately owned central bank. They issued a value-based currency. It turned Germany's economy around so fast. It was called the German miracle, and it was at that point all of the other nations enslaved to private central banks, especially Great Britain, said, we got to go in and smash them down. We can't let the world see that there's an economic system that actually works better for the nation and the people.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like you said, they better have the Kevlar underwear, because it looks like they're going to do an overthrow. All the news coming from Greece is they're trying to make it seem like it's a...
Newland's already in and out of Athens, and they're already trying to deny it, saying, oh, no, she's over there dealing with Armenia and Ukraine and all these other places, and she just went to Athens to get her picture, take a selfie at the Parthenon. And you shouldn't read anything into the fact that, she's been in and out of there since last March.
Oh, yeah, she's like the black cat. When you see a black cat, that there's like some bad's about to befall on you or something like that.
Now you're maligning the black cats. Okay?
All right, Michael, that's all I had to get off my chest.
All right, well, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here, and moving on over here to Iraq. Iraqis do not trust the U.S. for military recruitment. There seems to be an issue where the people being recruited by the U.S. government to aid Iraq against ISIS usually turn around defecting and going to ISIS. And they're kind of wondering what the heck is going on here. Of course, we understand what's been going on. Just like Al-Qaeda before them, ISIS is a manufactured fake enemy by the U.S. In fact, somebody did this wonderful editorial cartoon the other day. I saw it in a magazine, where it's the U.S. walking up to a country and they stick this little scarecrow with a label saying ISIS on it, step back, shoot the place full of holes, then grab the scarecrow and walk away. That's exactly what the U.S. is doing with ISIS. Now, the U.S. has now admitted they started a program not too long ago to supposedly train the Syrian opposition fighters to battle the Islamic State of Iraq. The original plan, they were going to train 5,400 fighters a year to go against ISIS. And they've only trained 60. 60. The U.S. is not serious about going up against ISIS because ISIS is an American ally against Bashar al-Assad. Another critical article about the F-35, basically saying that the Pentagon is spending money just because it's fun to spend money. And it's not their money they're using. They just love the sense of power, and it is something to behold. Many, many years ago, when I was still working for the visual effects animation industry in Hollywood, the company I worked for actually got approached by a defense contractor to help prepare a giant presentation for the U.S. Congress regarding the Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars. Now, I was already familiar with this kind of work from my NASA days, but most of the other people in this animation company were just absolutely blown away, because you and I, we think of money as something valuable coming out of a faucet. We budget with an eyedropper, or maybe we have a tap in the kitchen. And these people, the defense contractors, they've got fire hoses to play with. And it really is a shock to see just how cavalierly they're out there with $1 million here, $1 million there. Must be a lot of fun. Must be a huge rush, especially if it's not your own money. And this seems to be behind the bloat in the F-35 program. Okay, we're supposed to be getting some music here, I think. Okay, the machine... there we go. All right. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, talking about other economic developments out there in the world. Russia and China, encouraged by all this talk of U.S. sanctions, where the U.S. is saying, we're not going to let you play with our corporations like Boeing aircraft. Russia and China have just gotten together and said, we're going to build our own Boeing. We're not going to need Boeing any longer. We're not going to have to come and buy our airplanes from you. We're going to build them ourselves. We'll probably do a better job, too. These sanctions are isolating the United States from the rest of the world at a time when the United States can't manufacture its own products and grow its own food. But it's the politically correct thing to do, and we're going to go on doing it. We're going to go on pounding our own thumb with a sledgehammer to prove we're tougher than the other guys. Some kind of a weird mindset there. Microsoft is cutting 7,800 jobs, mostly in their Windows Phone business. Apparently, their acquisition of Nokia has not worked out as well as they might have liked, and they're taking a $7.6 billion write-down on that. Now, over in Israel and Palestine, as we mentioned, the Vatican recently signed a treaty with Palestine, recognizing them as a state. Usually these treaties are called a concordat, and basically it is a religious treaty about, yes, you recognize the Catholic Church, we're going to come in, this is what we're going to do back and forth. Israel is making a big stink over the fact that neither the Vatican nor Palestine will let them see this agreement. And they're absolutely right. It's none of Israel's business. That would be like Canada coming down to the United States of America and demanding to look at treaties the U.S. has signed with, say, Brazil. It's none of their business. But Israel's attitude is, we have a legitimate right to peek on everything that's going on. But the Vatican is standing firm and saying that this is an agreement between the Vatican and Palestine. Israel is not a factor, and they should just butt on out. I wish the negotiators at the P5+1 had the same courage, because Israel does not actually have standing to be part of this negotiation. They're in there kibitzing as hard as they can. Now, Associated Press has had to back off a story they ran not too long ago. In fact, it was last week during this whole big thing about gay marriage and everything. And when the media wants to bash somebody, the first thing to do is come out and say, oh, they're opposed to gays. They have laws against gays. And they were trying to sell that one about Putin, about, Russia has bans on homosexuality, which they did long ago, but that's actually been rescinded. And last week, the Associated Press came out and said that Jordan and Palestine, actually Gaza, have laws. Homosexuality is illegal in Jordan and Gaza. And they went back to laws passed in 1951 in Jordan, and a law passed by the British authorities in Gaza in 1936 to go on out and say, see, they hate the gays, you should hate them because they hate the gays. And as it turns out, of course, both laws were repealed long, long ago, and in a very rare moment of honesty and candor, Associated Press has had to come out and say, yeah, you caught us. We were just trying to make them look bad here. Now, I was noticing here on the Fox News feed just a little while ago where Hillary is out there screaming that the GOP is creating a climate of hostility toward the immigrants. You obviously are all a bunch of racists. You hate the immigrant. You don't have a legitimate reason to be concerned. You just have decided you're haters and you're going to hate the immigrants. They're playing the PC card. That you shouldn't complain about anything because it makes them feel bad. Now, following on the situation where this illegal immigrant who'd been deported over and over and over again had a long police criminal record and was still let loose by police 2 months ago and shot and killed this woman in San Francisco. And it turns out the gun he used belongs to a federal agent. And they're out there saying, well, obviously he just stole it. Really? How do you steal a gun from a federal agent? Federal agents, we understand, are supposed to be trained how to take care of their weapons, to protect it, and to understand the consequences if they lose it or it gets stolen. And at this point, the officials are declining to comment further, other than to acknowledge that, yes, the serial number on the gun confirms it is a U.S. government weapon. Now, here's an article that's coming out on marketticker.org. And I'm going to back up here. I'm not impressed with Donald Trump, but I have to admit, at least he has the courage to be talking about what's really going on in this country rather than pandering to the politically correct crowd. And as you know, Donald Trump has paid a very heavy price for coming out and talking about the illegal immigrant problem. They have TV networks have canceled deals with him. Corporations have canceled using his golf courses for their... They're really out there pounding on him to say, no, you can't talk about this. It's politically incorrect. And they even went so far as to misquote him, because what he actually said in his speech is, some illegal immigrants are rapists and criminals coming across the border. And that is certainly true. And the media said that he said, all of them were, see, he's just generalizing, it's prejudice, it's hate. All right, between November 1st of 2013 and October 31st, 2014, there were 4,317 charges of child sexual abuse filed against illegal immigrants in North Carolina alone. So tell me that Donald Trump was wrong to be concerned about this. In fiscal year 2014, illegal immigrants accounted for nearly 37% of all federal sentences in court. Now, they don't account for 37% of the general population. It's much smaller than that. There's a disproportionate number of these illegals winding up being sentenced to prison in these courts for crimes. Now, Donald Trump has upped the ante. He's not backing down. He's actually showing a lot of spine. And that is such a rarity in Washington, D.C. politics. I mean, we have to sit up and take notice. You know, he's got a backbone. And that's amazing. You have to applaud that. So he's out there saying that along with the fact that all these criminals are coming across the border, is the fact that they are bringing infectious diseases in. And, oh, boy, the PC crowd, they're out for Donald's blood now. Oh, you're a hater. You hate the immigrants. You're being racist. How dare you say all this stuff? And once again, Donald Trump is out there with a valid, legitimate concern. We'll have more details about that when we come back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about Donald Trump, who, whatever his other failings may be, he's got a backbone. He is not backing down from the firestorm of criticism over his comment that some illegal immigrants coming across that border have criminal histories. We know many of them are drug gang members who are coming in to set up supply pipelines for the Sinaloa cartel. They're bringing in guns they were given by the U.S. government at taxpayer expense through the Fast and Furious program. It is a reality. And apparently the politically correct movement, if you will, is this idea that truth isn't really a factor anymore. Everything has to be couched in terms of not offending anybody. We don't want to hurt the feelings of those illegal immigrants and make them feel inferior for being illegal immigrants. In fact, we shouldn't call them illegal immigrants. We're going to call them undocumented American citizens in waiting or something like that. Well, what about the feelings of all those 4,000 kids in North Carolina who got sexually molested? Don't their feelings count? How about the feelings of all those people who have lost jobs because the illegals are able to work for less money because they're not paying taxes? How about their feelings? Don't they count anymore? That's the big blindness of the politically correct movement, is it's completely unconcerned with the people who are already here, who are making the country work. Yeah, they're already there. Ignore them. We have to take care of this group and that group because that's our political future. And Hillary is counting on the illegal immigrant vote next year, and that's why she's out there screaming that the GOP, they're haters. They hate the illegal immigrants. So Donald Trump has come out with another statement. He's upping the ante. He's doubling down, to use a casino term. And basically he said, there are a lot of these people are coming to this country with infectious diseases. Now, when you come into the country legally, one of the requirements is a medical examination in order to prevent highly contagious illnesses from coming into this country. It's just common sense. Even in the days of Ellis Island, everybody arriving from Europe, give us your tired, your poor, your masses yearning to be free. They didn't include contagious in there. If you were contagious, you were put in quarantine till either you recovered or died, or they would send you home. Now, the illegals have brought infectious diseases into this nation. There have been confirmed cases of scabies, HIV, H1N1, tuberculosis, even one confirmed case of bubonic plague, the Black Death. And the political correct crowd's attitude is, well, we shouldn't talk about it. We're going to make them feel bad if we remind them that they're carrying all these diseases, and you shouldn't get sick or cough around them because that's being politically incorrect. And it's already getting ridiculous because of political correctness. There are certain topics you're not supposed to talk about. This is an attack on the First Amendment. We're not supposed to talk about the high crime rates with the illegals. We're not supposed to talk about the fact that they are carrying highly infectious, dangerous illnesses. We're not supposed to talk about the black-on-white crime problem because we're all supposed to focus when whites are abusing blacks. And like I said, Donald, it's kind of hard to take him seriously, but you got to admit, he's got a backbone. He's got a spine. And that is something lacking in the current American political structure. Now, a couple of articles here. Over at the Common Sense Show, illegal immigrant-related pandemic diseases are appearing in the U.S. This is quoting Dr. Jane Orient, basically saying that, yes, these illegals are carrying diseases. It triggered a major problem with the Border Patrol agents themselves who were coming down with all these serious illnesses, and they couldn't work because they had to stay home because they were catching these diseases. Another article from the New American, disease rampant among illegal immigrants housed in U.S. facilities. Western Journalism, the CDC issued a warning. Immigrant children can be spreading mystery virus in public schools. This is the one that's supposed to be triggering polio-like symptoms, but it's politically incorrect to say that it's actually polio. Another story over here on ABC News, no less. Undocumented immigrants bringing diseases across the border. Story from Judicial Watch. Illegal alien minors spreading tuberculosis, dengue fever, swine flu. Over at Al.com, Congressman claims illegal immigrants bringing diseases to the U.S. This is Alabama Congressman. And his name is Brooks, saying, yeah, this is a problem. And the PC crowd says you shouldn't talk about it because you're going to make them feel bad. How about every healthy American who comes down with this illness being brought in and then is forced into bankruptcy because the Obamacare insurance policies aren't going to pay their medical costs. How about their feelings? Where's the politically correct movement to take care of the American people? It doesn't seem to be there. It's always focused on some special interest group, some niche little agenda here. Story out of the Washington Post, no less. Is there a link between measles outbreak and illegal immigration? And there's a wonderful quote in there. I don't think there is any healthcare professional who has examined the facts who can honestly say that Americans have not died because of the diseases brought into America by illegal aliens who are not properly healthcare screened as lawful immigrants are. It might be the enterovirus that has a heavy presence in Central and South America that has caused deaths of American children over the past 6 to 9 months. It might be this measles outbreak. There are any number of things. Representative Mo Brooks, Republican of Alabama, interviewed on the Matt Murphy radio show. But you know something? If you get sick, it's okay, because it stimulates the economy. Because you'll have to go to the doctors, you'll have to pay money for an examination, you'll have to get a prescription, you'll have to go to the pharmacy and buy medication. See, that's good for the economy. So you should all rush right out and just embrace one of these illegal immigrants and catch their diseases. It's politically correct for you to share their viruses and spread them around, because it will stimulate the economy if everybody is sick and having to go to the doctors. That's how insane this is. Another story out of the Washington Times, disease plague illegal immigrants, lack of medications, basic hygiene. And they're talking about they had serious outbreaks of illness at the New Mexico housing facility for the illegal immigrant families. And it wasn't just the immigrants, it was the American citizens who worked there came down with these. The Gateway Pundit, top U.S. doctor, illegal immigrant children may be spreading mysterious respiratory disease. And here is one for the history books. I cannot believe I'm actually in agreement with Bill O'Reilly about something, because he has come out in Trump's defense, saying, yes, Donald Trump is right. The illegal immigrants are not screened for illnesses when they come across the border. They're just brought in and sent all across the country. He's absolutely right. Okay, boy, we've got a lot of callers waiting here on the line. I'm going to start with Dustin in New Jersey, and I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Yeah, I'm from New Jersey, and, people need to remember Donald Trump is from, he's in Atlantic City. That's a Democratic stronghold. I don't trust Donald Trump. I think he's a spoiler. And we mix Donald Trump's, I understand what he's saying with the illegal immigrants, but throw in the Confederate flag, and he's going to be on stage with other GOP. I think it's a win-win for Hillary.
Maybe, maybe not. Hillary is starting to self-destruct. We're going to be talking about that later on. And by the way, I'm one of those people who thinks that you have a First Amendment right to fly whatever flag you want, whether it's the Confederate flag or the Gadsden flag. And by the way, that flag they're arguing over was never officially a flag of the Confederate States of America. Andrew, got to let you go. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go right back to the phones here. And we have got Trom from Croatia. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello?
Hello, you are on the air.
Hey, Michael. Was about to say, appears like in the U.S., like, illegals are treated much better than U.S. citizens are.
Yes, I'm thinking of renouncing my citizenship and learning Spanish, and I'll probably get a better deal from the U.S. government that way.
Yeah, I know. What I want to talk about the election, the private central bankers, I think, they don't want Hillary Clinton to run for office because, I think she'll try to run the country, and they want to see, a puppet like Obama and George W. Bush, who will, take orders.
Oh,
so
I don't think they have to worry about Hillary. I mean, look how Hillary, she gets $3 million from Haim Saban and these other rich donors, and all of a sudden she's going to attack Iran, and she's against the BDS. No, she's for sale. She has made that very clear. She's hung out the for sale sign. She's there in her little skimpy negligee with a little change machine on her belt and sending the message that if you just put the little coin in the slot, you will get whatever it is you want from her.
I'm saying, since there's, a huge backlash against, Obama and Democrats, they prefer, a Republican who's basically just going to be the same as Obama, like, in truth, like, both parties are the same.
Yeah, there's very little difference between them. And the only reason we have a two-party system is to create the illusion that we have some kind of a choice, while at the same time limiting the number of candidates a corporation has to buy off in order to completely bypass the election. When this nation was started, anybody could have a political party. And because there were limits on donations to political parties, the strength and size of a political party did represent its actual popular support. But over time, it's become whittled away. There's only the two parties. The laws are set up to prevent third parties from coming in. And basically, these parties are both for sale to the highest corporate bidder or national bidder.
One thing I was about to say, like, a lot of people joined this, like, this political system we have in the U.S. is just like a crime mafia organization. Like,
very much so.
You look at, like, Bill Clinton, like, how corrupt he is and, like, what he's done, and, like, they kill people like Vince Foster who, like, dared to, like, cover what he did, and it's just, like really crazy.
Well, I'm coming to the conclusion that all governments are oligarchies and all governments are organized crime. Certainly in the modern world that seems to be true. It's just, you know, human civilization has not really advanced much since the caveman days. We just have nuclear clubs instead of the wooden ones.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. All righty, now getting on back to Hillary Rodham Clinton. As I mentioned before, she's gotten $3 million, possibly more, from media mogul Haim Saban, and immediately launched her attack on the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, calling for bipartisan support. And she'll get it. Everybody in the U.S. Congress, you know, davens to Tel Aviv. And she'll get it. It's time to end boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Now, I got to tell you, if Hillary sucks up to Israel any harder than she is right now, Bill Clinton's going to get really jealous. Because he never got treated that good. And basically, Hillary is willing to sell out, not just herself, but our founding principle of freedom of speech. Because boycotts are a recognized form of peaceful, nonviolent protest, protected under the First Amendment. And Hillary is ready to sell out that First Amendment right to freedom of speech for Israeli cash. Okay? Now, Hillary just had this interview on CNN, came out trying to play victim. Oh, remember the vast right-wing conspiracy? When they were, she's still playing the same games. Oh, there's a plot to get me. All those people who hate women, they're out to get me. All those people who hate immigrants, they're out to get me. All the people who hate the gays are out to get me. And she did not get quite the warm reaction that she expected. It was still a softball interview. Okay, it's still a softball interview, but it didn't go as well as she might like. Because I think the media is getting fed up with her. And Hillary Clinton made a serious goof because she came out saying the same thing she's been saying all along, that everything she did with her email server, there was no prohibition, there was no controlling legal authority, it was all perfectly legal. If there were laws that were passed after that, it was just to make her look bad. I'm expecting her to say Chinese hackers planted all that information on her server. And then she did the big one. She came out and said she had never been subpoenaed for the emails from Benghazi. When asked why it was turning up, that a lot of those emails hadn't been delivered to the Congressional Committee. Remember, they came out of Sidney Blumenthal's server, his email account. It made it obvious Hillary did not turn over all the emails, and she said on CNN, I was never actually subpoenaed to turn those over. Yeah, she was. We have a copy of the actual subpoena on whatreallyhappened.com. She lied right to all of America and to CNN again. We got her dead to rights. She's lied yet again. And she's still out there saying people should and do trust me. They love me. They trust. I'm so trustworthy. She's out there. And she's out there saying that this idea that she and Bill Clinton are not trustworthy, it's just a theme that, you know, the enemies are putting together. She's going to come back to the vast right-wing conspiracy. And she's out there saying, you should all trust me. And my answer to that is, throughout all of history, everyone who ever got used, betrayed, lied to, double-crossed, murdered, Vince Foster, had it done to them by someone they thought they could trust. The Clintons are not trustworthy at all. Now, in response to the fact that it is now documented and confirmed Libyan weapons were smuggled over to Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria to use against Assad, Hillary is now claiming she didn't know what was going on, even though her name is on these emails talking about the weapons transfer. Remember yesterday we were saying she has committed an act of treason under U.S. law, providing aid and comfort, mainly weapons, to our declared enemies, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, during a war on terror. Giving aid and comfort to the enemy in time of war is treason. They hang people for that. And so now she's coming back saying that she had no idea this was going on. This was her State Department, had no idea they were doing it. So either she's lying again, or she's an incompetent moron who couldn't run her own State Department, and either way, she's not fit to be president. Personally, I think it's both. And she's in serious, serious trouble. All right, we're going to try and grab a couple of quick phone calls from the before the news break. I have an anonymous caller here. What do you want to talk about?
Hi. This is Steve from Massachusetts.
Hi, Steve.
I want to talk. Hi. Speaking of lying, I feel much better now that Obama has told us that the Greece voting for no won't cause a crisis anywhere. So
I'm so relieved. I'm so relieved. Really.
Yeah, he made me feel really safe.
Oh, good. Yes, crack open the champagne and the cigars.
What I want to talk to you about is Jade Helm.
Yes.
And I saw this interview, and I forget the guy's name. It's Simon something, but he was making some pretty good points. He said the reason for the Jade Helm is to isolate the troops from the people, thinking that the cops would fire on people with no problem. But he says the troops, he's not so sure to do that because there's a strong sense of community between the troops and the people. And he says the way to break that sense of community is to have the troops march down with their full combat gear through the streets and kind of introduce a different side to them where they...
and definitely have them operate in somebody else's community. Because it's one of the reasons why military people get rotated around so much and never stay too long in one place. They don't want them forming emotional attachments to ordinary people in ordinary locations, and that's why every year or 2 years you get transferred to another location. That's intentional. They spend a lot of money doing that so that you're emotionally confined to the military structure and don't form attachments to the community. All right, I need to let you go. We got to take another break for news, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open. 877-300-7645. 877-300-7645. And we are getting a report that the Wisconsin State Capitol building has been evacuated over what is being described as a credible bomb threat, which they put credible in there to make it seem much more serious, because how often do you get an incredible bomb threat? But they've evacuated everybody. They're searching. No word that they've actually found anything. Until they do, this is just more racking up the booga-booga, think terror attack, the terrorists are coming to get you. And by the way, I still think all of those tourism venues who lost business last July 4th because of all the scaremongering about ISIS is going to come out, they ought to get together and file a class action lawsuit against Department of Homeland Security and FBI and CIA and all the rest of those, because their business suffered harm. The U.S. government is 0-41 at, actually predicting there's going to be a major terror attack. Now then, getting on back to Hillary Clinton, apparently some of her donors don't much like Russia, because now she's out there saying that it's time for a constant engagement with Russia. Now, she has been one of the most stalwart of Putin bashers, Russia bashers and saying that Europe is too wimpy in dealing with Russia. They should just go on and start the war, and we'll get in there eventually, just like we did last time. Which, if you talk to Europeans about World War II, they don't see the U.S. as having won the war or even helped all that much. It was kind of an attitude of, took you long enough to get here. The U.S. basically waited until Russia had already destroyed much of the Third Reich's army. And it was obvious Germany was going to lose in the long run. Let's get in on the winning side, and then we'll rewrite the history books. Now, Bernie Sanders is doing really, really good. When Hillary Clinton was campaigning around for just before that CNN interview where she told that real steamer about not being subpoenaed for her emails about Benghazi, she had a campaign stop that drew maybe 250 people. And they're down to giving away the tickets for free now. Bernie Sanders is getting thousands of people to show up. He got 9,000 in this sports arena in Portland, Maine. And he's attracting the youth crowd, the young people, who are basically out there saying, yeah, Bernie is right. By the way, the display of spine is working for Donald Trump. His numbers are going up. And it's nice to see candidates out there who are actually going to talk about what's going on rather than simply pandering to the special interest groups and trying to create these fringe issues that don't affect our lives that they can campaign on. And by the way, they're still out there regarding the Confederate flag. There's an article over here in Investment Watch blog talking about how apparently people in Washington, D.C. say it's time to take down the Jefferson Memorial. They should rename Washington, D.C. because Washington was a slave owner and Jefferson was a slave owner. And yes, they were. It was legal and even considered moral at the time. And we shouldn't judge their behavior in our context because these things do change over time. And besides, anybody who thinks slavery has gone away, take a look at that 1040 form. Now, the reason they're attacking Jefferson is not because he owned slaves. And by the way, on his death, he set them all free. They're attacking him because Jefferson is the most often quoted founding father of our nation in terms of limiting the authority of the central government and always being willing to tear it down and start it all over again. And he's popular for that reason. And for that reason, just like they're trying to make us forget about independence on Independence Day, they kind of want Jefferson to go away. And they want to take Andrew Jackson off the $20 bill because he stood up to the private central bankers, and that can't be allowed. Now, we've been talking about these two former CNN anchors. Actually, Lynn Russell is the anchor. Chuck DeCaro was a reporter. They got assaulted by an armed criminal in their motel room in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He defended himself and his wife and shot the perpetrator dead. And that's good. I'm glad he did that. And they've gone out and they've said, yes, the Second Amendment saved our lives. And the Second Amendment is about protecting ourselves from armed criminals who are going to have guns regardless of all the bans that you put together. Criminals will have guns. If you know anything about a machine shop and chemistry, you can build a gun. It's not that hard. If nobody has any guns and you build a single-shot flintlock pistol, that's enough for you to go out and commit crimes. And so these two are out there saying guns absolutely saved their lives. This attacker indicated a willingness to commit acts of violence to get what he wanted. And these two are out there saying, look, if you don't like guns, we're not going to force you to own one. If you don't want to carry a gun, don't carry a gun. But you don't have a right to tell us not to. Because as this incident proves one more time, the police are never there in time to prevent the crime, to thwart the crime. They're glad to show up when it's all over and pose with the bloody bodies for the news cameras, but they're never there in time to stop it. Meanwhile, every year in this country, over 1 million crimes are thwarted in progress, stopped from being completed by law-abiding American citizens with legally owned firearms. I'm one of them. When we lived in Southern California, I scared away a burglar who had broken into our house. And fortunately, I didn't have to pull the trigger. I just put that laser dot on his forehead. And it's the funny thing about those red laser dots, it sends the message that somewhere somebody is thinking about you. And that's a tremendous discouragement. And so these former CNN staffers are out there saying, look, you know, you can do what you want to do. Don't tell us what to do, and shut the blank up. Rhymes with luck. And they're absolutely right to do that. Now, there's an article that came out from the Daily Sheeple, the facts that gun grabbers can't wrap their minds around. It's not a case of can't, it's won't. Every time they want to come out with statistics about how guns cause crime, it's always gun-related crime. And yes, where there are more guns, you're going to have more gun-related crime. What they will never do is talk about gun ownership in terms of total crime. Because when you have an armed citizenry, total crime goes down. They don't want to talk about that. Their agenda isn't reducing crime, it's disarming the public so that you will do as you're told by the government. Because the politically correct movement believes that you should always do what the government tells you to do. That's your job. Your only role here in life is to pay taxes and support the bankers and buy the medicines and food you're told to buy and pop out more workers and soldiers. That's your only job. And then go back to your slave pen and watch your TV and stop bothering us. We've got important things to do, like conquering the world. Needless to say, there's been another shooting to try and offset the effect of the attack on the CNN people, and this one had witnesses, and there's something very bizarre about it. 3 people were killed, 1 injured near the University of Maryland. It was going to be another campus shooting, but witnesses saw 2 light-colored vans that pulled up on the street and opened fire on these students. So they don't have a lone nut patsy that they can frame this on. Somebody saw the shooting actually happen. There were 2 light-colored vans. That's a coordinated conspiracy to do this. Looks too sloppy to be a mafia hit, by the way. Not too surprisingly, gun sales spiked 11% in June. Every time the gun grabbers go on out there and say, we got to take the guns away, people start buying guns. Once I get the new website up and running, I'm probably going to go ahead and complete this AR-15 somebody sent me the parts for. 80% gun. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And this being a day with so many computer problems between Wall Street's or the New York Stock Exchange glitch, the Wall Street Journal going down, the power system over there in that D.C. suburb, and, of course, United Airlines, which has created a travel nightmare across the country. We're going to talk about computers here. And I got to tell you, I am really enjoying the heck out of this little Commodore VIC-20. It's great for instant gratification. You type in what you want, it does what you tell it to do here. And I'm saying that having come out of this nightmare of writing the new WhatReallyHappened.com website, which, thanks to a lot of suggestions that were sent in by people, I finally figured out what the problem is. Part of the problem is that different browsers respond differently to responsive layouts. And I discovered I tend to use Firefox as my default browser. And it turns out Firefox doesn't handle responsive layouts very elegantly. It turns out Chrome handles it beautifully. Safari handles it beautifully. It works perfectly on my iPhone. Opera does as well. But both Firefox and Internet Explorer, you can look at the site on your desktop, but if you try and shrink the window down for like one of those little Windows Surface things, it's not going to work. Because apparently nobody follows the standards anymore in this country. Now then, there was a story last Christmas where there was this teenager who hacked into the PlayStation and Xbox networks and crashed them. And he has been convicted of 50,700 offenses. And apparently this kid was part of the Lizard Squad network that just wrecked Christmas for millions of people who couldn't use their new PlayStation and Xbox, and he was let off with a wrist slap, which I'm starting to wonder if this Lizard Squad isn't another one of these clandestine NSA groups. Kaspersky keeps finding out this evil hacker group. Oh, that tracks back to the National Security Agency here. Now, as you know, the hacking team company got their server hacked. It's a company in Italy. It's in Milan. And their business is just creating commercial, professional hacking tools to sell to some of the most repressive dictatorships on earth, including the United States of America. The FBI has spent almost $750,000 buying software from them. And because this hacking team didn't take their own security all that seriously, somebody got in there and downloaded 400 gigabytes of their internal data, which has now been spread out among all the various computer security companies like Kaspersky. And they are finding that there are all these previously unknown exploits. Unpatched vulnerability in the Flash player. Remember yesterday I was saying that Flash player is constantly crashing. Why does anybody use it? It's a security nightmare. Apparently there's reports of unpatched vulnerabilities in Windows. That's kind of a given. Yeah, there's always going to be another hole in Windows. And one in SE Linux. And apparently these flaws were used by hacking team customers to deploy their software on computers, on their surveillance targets, meaning pretty much everybody. Hacking is big business here. As a result of this, over at Investment Watch blog, there's an article. A former MI5 officer is saying that any government using any U.S. military software is vulnerable. It's all got back doors, so the U.S. can shut off your weapons remotely anytime they feel like doing it. And yeah, it's got to be a major problem. Now, this was coming out of a report that hackers had managed to breach the network controlling a German missile system and could have, if they wanted to, launched the rockets. Now, Germany's Defense Department is saying this is nonsense, this is scaremongering, there's no way this could happen, it's an isolated network. But somebody was trying to put it out there. This idea that, you know, they're selling, hackers are bad, hackers can take over weapon systems, hackers can take over whatever. There is now talk circulating around Washington, D.C. about an E-Patriot Act, a new piece of draconian legislation. And it could very well be that this glitch on Wall Street and United Airlines and the rest of it are going to be used as justification to basically have more government control over the Internet, to take it back, to have it route through central servers so that they can control and censor information, which is not what the Internet was originally designed to do. The Internet was originally designed to provide information transfer, even if major portions of its structure were destroyed in a nuclear attack. That was its original design. But there's a very interesting aspect inside this article about the E-Patriot Act. Okay, they're talking about the recent breach in the Office of Personnel Management where personal data for U.S. government employees who had security clearances, including all the dirt the FBI dug up about them, was now in the hands of whoever the hackers were. Nobody knows who did the hack, but it's being blamed on China. China, of course, has denied it. But apparently Obama is now saying that because China hacked the OPM, we're going to impose sanctions on China. And looking at how well the sanctions worked against Russia, I don't think China has anything to worry about. Now, there's an article over in ZDNet, The Impossible War on Encryption. And they're talking about the stir that David Cameron has kicked up over in Britain, where he wants to outlaw all encryption other than encryption systems the government approves, with the understanding that the government can break into them. It's basically their version of key escrow or clipper chip. And he's out there saying, we just want to make sure the terrorists do not have a safe place in which to communicate. And we're not going to spy on ordinary British people. Of course you are, David. Because we already proved here that real criminals and real terrorists can create their own systems of encryption that the NSA and GCHQ cannot break, because we did it 6 times in a row. And I am not a professional encryption expert. I'm only a moderately decent programmer. If I can do it, they can do it. So this forbidding of law-abiding citizens from using encryption other than that which the government has a backdoor to is not about real criminals and terrorists. It's about spying on the people to make sure they're not thinking those double plus ungood thoughts. Banning encryption for law-abiding citizens is going to be as effective as banning guns. The law-abiding will be harmed and helpless, and the criminals are going to go on doing what they've always done. Because the criminals are always going to have guns, and they're always going to have strong encryption. It's much easier to come up with strong encryption than with a firearm. Let's be honest. Now, here in the U.S., the FBI and their director, James Comey, are launching an anti-encryption campaign, claiming that ISIS is the new villain, and we can't let ISIS have secure communications. We'll be right back with why that is utter nonsense. America, welcome back to our show here. Now, we're talking about the FBI and the director, James Comey, are out there urging Congress to ban encryption because of ISIS. They're playing the ISIS card, saying that we have to know what ISIS has said. We can't let them have secure communication, and that means that you must ban all encryption for everybody except what we can read. Okay? Now, setting aside the fact that we proved it is very easy to create new systems of encryption that will defeat the NSA, the ludicrousness of his argument, I mean, basically his entire theory that they can watch ISIS by banning strong encryption is that ISIS will just agreeably stop using whatever encryption they're using now and go and buy the government-approved, pre-backdoored systems, and then everything will be peaches and cream. That's where it breaks down. It's the same fallacy with the gun control. They say, we must take this away to stop the criminals. Okay, but you never stop the criminals. The criminals aren't going to obey the gun laws. The terrorists aren't going to obey the encryption laws. That's where it breaks down. And we know that the NSA have become the biggest cyber criminals of all on this planet. They're breaking into our computers. They're stealing our business secrets for their own personal financial gain. They're literally preying on the American people. During these hard economic times, they're causing untold amounts of economic damage to small businesses trying to launch a new product. Plus, they're acquiring private personal information that can be used to blackmail people, like Supreme Court judges. And yes, Edward Snowden revealed that they help themselves to all the pictures you take of your significant other in states of undress. Traded around like free porn trading cards. All of it a violation of the Fourth Amendment, of course. And like gun laws, failure to keep guns out of the hands of people who don't obey the law, banning encryption for ordinary Americans is going to cause all kinds of problems, because if there's a backdoor in there, the real cyber criminals will find it, and they'll be stealing business secrets, and they'll be stealing credit card information, and all the rest of it. Because we're left unprotected. The NSA is not making our nation, our cyber structure, more secure. They're making it less secure, because they want to peek, they want to pry, they want to poke. And a large amount of the current cybercrime we're dealing with are the cyber criminals finding the back doors built into these systems by the NSA. And it won't stop real criminals and real terrorists. They're just like they're going to go out and get guns from Fast and Furious at taxpayer expense. They're going to write their own systems of encryption. They're going to use steganography. The NSA isn't even going to know there's a message there, let alone how to read it. It is a reality in the computer age. Secure communications are very, very easy. And the government doesn't like that. The government is very scared of you. They don't want you to have a private communication. You might be saying something they don't like. Well, my message to the government is simply this. The Fourth Amendment is unequivocal. You are not allowed to come into my data unless you have evidence, oath, affirmation, I am committing a crime. And you don't have a right to come in and copy off my Aunt Mary's top secret chocolate chip cookie recipe just because your paranoid fantasies that maybe I don't love you. We're going to grab ourselves a phone call here. Unknown caller in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's up, Mike? It's me, Mark.
Okay, well, it wasn't showing up in the little window here, and that's computer code for you.
That's all right, but that reminds me, talking about computers. My first thought right off the bat was this is another government false flag.
Yeah.
Probably worked with Wall Street together to try to scare us and come after the internet and do all kinds of other mischief. I
actually don't think so. I actually don't think so in this case, because this kind of a false flag where there's a cyber attack on the stock market could trigger a run on the banks and stock brokerages, and nobody wants that. So I think something else is going on. Either they had to take a desperate action to block some massive sell orders that were coming in, or something else like that. But they were in a rush to reassure us that it wasn't an outside attack, it was just a technical glitch, because the alternative would be that, yes, everybody would say, I'm going to pull my money out of the bank just in case.
Yeah, you might have a point there, because, like I said, they were probably afraid of panic because of what's happening with China and Greece.
Yes.
That's possible. So another thing I want to bring out is, as far as the Second Amendment, something that happened to me last week. I got woken up at 3:30 in the morning by my dog,
Mm-hmm.
And right away I went on alert, I look out and I see a car right on my front lawn. Okay? So I'm thinking two things. Either somebody's up to something or they're stealing my car,
Yes.
First thing I did, I didn't go to the phone and call 911. I went right to the drawer, got my gun out, I got my flashlight, and went outside. That car took off like a bat out of hell. Okay? I don't know. I couldn't even tell how many people were in it or anything else. After that, I finally called the sheriff's department, but not 911, just to report what happened. And then I talked to somebody that had an IQ of about 10, some woman that had an IQ of about 10.
They've raised the requirements, apparently.
Yeah, I guess so. Better than zero, right? She asked me all kinds of dumb questions. Do I want to meet with an officer? I said, I don't want to meet with anybody, okay? I'm just telling you what happened. And he says, I've got 2 pit bulls and I've got firearms in the house. I don't want my dogs to get shot, and I don't want to get shot, because that's what happens sometimes when these cops come there. Don't know what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm just going back to sleep. I just let you know what happened. That's it. It's amazing.
Well, I wouldn't have even bothered calling, because the one time when I did chase the burglar out of our house, I did call the police to file a report. They never showed up. They don't want to take reports where citizens have actually thwarted a crime with a legally owned firearm. They don't want those numbers out there. So they never showed up in my case. And, if they're not going to do anything about it and you don't have evidence to lead to the people who were actually in that car, it was a waste of time to call the police anyway. And you're right. You're risking having your dogs or yourself shot by some trigger-happy police officer out of his mind on antidepressants.
Yeah, antidepressants, or maybe taking steroids. It's funny. There's 2 types of cops. You see the fat donut eaters, and you see the ones that are all pumped up now on steroids. I don't know, which are even more dangerous, because the steroids make you do crazy stuff. So, and either way, I don't need them coming over to the house, because I took care of things. It's the way the Americans should take care of problems like that. And the only reason I did call the cops is because, knowing the way things work, for all I know, whomever was in that car might go to the police and say I threatened them with a gun, So you never know.
Well, you're going to ask, why were you on my front lawn? You were on my property without my permission. And no, they're not going to report you for threatening with a gun, because that opens up a lot of questions they don't want to answer. Little historical footnote. Everybody knows the Thompson submachine gun. The gangster's favorite, was also a trench warfare weapon in World War II. Believe it or not, it was originally built for ranchers to chase rustlers away with. That was its original market niche, was to protect your cows from the cattle rustlers out in the Old West. That's where it came from. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the last segment of our program today here. And I'm starting to get emails coming in from our listeners in Europe with articles and links and videos and photos of the very massive anti-austerity protests taking place all across Europe. I'm looking at one here now. There's a demonstration in London. They're all in favor of Greece standing up to the money junkies. And the money junkies are trying to crack down because as of the 1st of this month, Spain has officially gone back to being a dictatorship because on July 1st, in response to the fact that Spain has been, the people of Spain have been the most vocal opponents of austerity and enslavement to the EU, the Spanish government passed a gag law that went into effect on July 1st, and it basically makes criminals out of anybody protesting anything, including the law itself. The fines range up to 600,000 euros for unauthorized protests. In other words, you can protest about anything the government tells you it's okay to protest about, but if you criticize the Spanish government, it is a 600,000 euro fine. It is now against Spanish law to take unauthorized photographs of law enforcement as they club the protesters into the cement. And this is clearly being done in response to the fact that Spain has been a major focal point of anti-austerity protests, with Catalan already talking about secession and independence. And they're basically talking about, you will love and respect us or you will be clubbed and go to jail. That's it. And somewhere in the bowels of the dark regions of heck, Generalissimo Francisco Franco is laughing his head off right now because Spain has gone back to being a fascist dictatorship. And it will be coming here. I mean, look at Hillary. She's already trying to sell out the First Amendment right to protest to the highest bidder in Israel. That's where we're going. This government does not respect and comply with the Constitution. They'll get up there, put their hand on the Bible, raise their hand, and swear an oath to the Constitution, and as soon as the hand comes off the Bible, they'll completely forget about it. Because their job isn't really to preserve, protect, defend the Constitution, to bear truth, faith, and allegiance to it. Their job is to sell you as slaves or customers to various financial interests, and that is fascism. Now, we're hearing another story out of Maryland where there was a gang, a street gang, indicted for 2 murders, part of the MS-13 gang. They were indicted for 2 murders, 3 attempted murders, extortion and racketeering, and yes, 3 of them were illegal immigrants who had been previously deported and were in the United States illegally. So tell me how Donald Trump is wrong to point out that the illegal immigrant problem is bringing a crime problem into this country. At the same time, the Obama administration is insisting you don't need guns to protect yourselves. Really? You don't? No, the police will take care of you. Really? I mean, it's politically correct to not believe me when I say that. Now, speaking of political correctness, and this is just absolutely absurd, this story came out of LiveLeak, and apparently the Obama administration has changed the requirements over at the Federal Aviation Administration, the job requirements to be an air traffic controller, because it's just dominated by those white males. And the reason it's dominated by white males is in giving the examinations to qualify somebody as an air traffic controller, the white males are passing them. The white males are showing up for the class. There's not a lot of women and minorities wanting to be air traffic controllers. But that is not politically correct, because we're going to prove we're racially balanced by mandating racial and sexual and gender equality and orientation equality all across the board. And so they're actually starting to basically ignore the people who have passed these classes from the 36 FAA-approved college aviation programs across the United States of America. They're ignoring them because too many of the people who pass those classes are white males. They've stopped giving preference to applicants who are military veterans with aviation experience, And now the new process for hiring an air traffic controller involves things like how many different high school sports you participated in. It's a social selection thing. We want 3 football players and 2 golfers and a couple of soccer players, and we got to have so many men, so many women, so many blacks, so many whites, so many peach, taupe, and mauve. That's political correctness. Now, call me silly, but when I am in a pressurized metal tube hurtling along at 35,000 MSL, I want the person on the ground who's telling the pilot what to be doing to be the very best qualified for the job, regardless of race, creed, color, gender, or orientation. This kind of an exercise in political correctness of mandating a quota system into air traffic control is going to get people killed. If you know anything at all about air traffic control, it is a high-stress job. It requires intense powers of concentration and alertness and attention. And you don't want to have some average-level dullard sitting there at the scope, because then you will have things happen, like that F-16 that crashed into a Cessna the other day. Now, here is another example of PC completely out of control. This happened a little earlier this year. Down in Florida, a family was making their way home. They were 90 minutes behind schedule. They got stuck in traffic. And their 11-year-old son came home from school, did not have a key, so he went into the backyard of their home and played basketball, shot hoops, waiting for his parents to get home. A curious neighbor, seeing the boy outside alone, called the authorities, saying the child was being neglected. And the authorities show up. They arrest and strip search the parents and grab the kid because he was playing basketball without supervision in the backyard of his own home. Now, once, long ago, when I was in the Boy Scouts, I went with the Scouts on a camping trip, and over the same weekend, the rest of my family decided they were going to go to Palm Springs. So far, so good. Now, when the Scouts arrived at the designated location for the camp out, we discovered it had been flooded. Couldn't camp out, didn't have an alternate site, so the Scoutmaster simply took us all back home. Now, this is before cell phones were around, and there was no way I could get in touch with my parents. I'm a Boy Scout. I pitched my tent in the backyard. I asked the neighbors to use their toilet, and otherwise had fun until my parents got home. And nobody called me neglected. I mean, this idea of the nanny state coming in because your child is not under your constant supervision, that they can say your child is neglected and we can take it away, especially when we live in an economy that mandates both parents work. Prior to the feminist revolution of the 1990s, the norm was one parent would work and the other would stay home with the kids. We have a niece. She's a doctor. She works. The husband stays with the kids. The kids are taken care of. They're happy kids. They're growing up fine. But in this economy, the feminist revolution didn't tell women that it was okay to have a career. It said you should want a career. Get on out there and have a job, which doubled the tax base for the government. And with the economy being where it is, most families, both parents do have to work. And the kids are going to be left alone. And to all of a sudden say, oh my goodness, you're both working, but you left your kid alone, we're going to take the kid. It's completely out of control. It is completely, completely out of control. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here and put some finishing touches on the brand new WhatReallyHappened.com website. Will be up by the end of this week. We're definitely on track to see that happen. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Genesis Communication Network. Until then, stay safe, stay well, stay skeptical, stay informed, make good choices. Go ahead and get angry. Now is the time. Share what you know with who you know. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.